So let's maybe set the scene a little bit on actually what is CBAM reporting and what does everybody do? Well, basically there are a couple of sides to CBAM within the EU and also within China. So maybe if we just start on the right-hand side of the screen here. Basically, there are two roles that are played by companies in the EU. The first is the brand, the second is the importer. Right? These could be the same or they could be different. Basically, the importer is the person who is actually the one bringing the products over the border into the EU and filling in the customs declarations, to put it very, very simply. Now, under CBAM, what this person needs to do is collect emissions data from the exporter in China or wherever else outside the EU, and they need to report this emissions data to the EU registry. What they'll also need to do following 2027 is pay a certificate for the emissions reporting. Right? So per ton of emissions that you report, you will have to pay an amount for that. Okay, and this amount basically is going to be the difference between the EU carbon price over the last 3 months and the carbon price in whatever country of origin that the goods came from. Now, where it gets complicated is when we get to the exporter side, right? So actually, a lot of the onus for getting the data for CBAM reporting falls on suppliers. So that's either the exporter who is exporting directly from China to the EU. A lot of the time, this is a trader or some kind of sort of assembly company. Now, what this person needs to do is they need to measure and provide emissions data to the import into the EU. And this in itself can be quite challenging, right? You need to really understand within your operations actually what emissions are being produced and come up with a calculation on a product level of your emissions. Where it gets even more complicated is you need to collect data from what are called precursor materials, which means actually all of the raw materials that went into the product, you need to make sure that you have the emissions data from those as well. So, and then there's obviously the suppliers of those precursor materials need to provide you with that emissions data. Now, this is going to be the theme of today's workshop, right? How do we perform these two steps? Because typically where we see that the whole CBAM process breaks down is that EU importers really struggle to get data from their suppliers in China. And suppliers in China, that's not their fault. It's basically that getting this emissions data can be really, really challenging for them. So this is something that we want to start to tackle through the content of today's workshop.